Hi, I'm Erchana. I am an ultra marathon runner and you're watching me on Run Forest Run TV. My name is Erchana Murray-Bartlett. I'm 33 years old. I live here on the beautiful Gold Coast, and earlier this year I broke a Guinness World Record by running 150 marathons in 150 days from the top of mainland Australia all the way to the bottom, Cape York to Melbourne. I grew up in regional Victoria and I have 3 sisters and we have 4 girls in 5 years. So with 2 very stressed parents, they used to kick us out in the morning and then just invite us home for dinner. So I spent a lot of time understanding my surroundings just because I had nothing else to do. So I'd explore through the bush and I found a big connection to running and to the outdoors and nature just purely through entertaining myself in my early years. And yeah, as I actually had a soccer career for the first kind of 10 years of my life, right through until I was 23. I played soccer in the US and in England. And upon returning home, I moved to Melbourne. I didn't know anybody. And I wanted to try something new. And I wanted to meet people. So I joined an athletics club at the end of my street and I was really nervous. And I remember my very first session, we were doing 600s and I fell in love with it. I was good at it. I loved everybody that was there. And from that moment, I was into running. I was a runner from that moment and I loved it. And as the years progressed, I realized I was better at the longer distances. I would, lose all the short races and start to win the longer ones, to the point that in 2018, 2019, I started to win some big city marathons. So I won Brisbane Marathon, I was 3rd at Melbourne Marathon, 2nd at Canberra Marathon. I thought, oh, okay, I can really do this. This is my calling. Marathons are my distance. I love them. I love the challenge. I respect the marathon. So I decided to go all in and try and get a spot in the Australian team. And trained up, went all in, 100%. That was my focus. And yeah, in 2019, I flew to Germany to toe the start line at the Berlin Marathon. It was incredible. I was flying in that race. It was perfect conditions and I was probably flying a little bit too much because at the 37K mark, I got a shooting pain through my hip that completely stopped me in my tracks and I had to DNF the race. And yeah, I was absolutely devastated. I'd put all into this race. I'd flown to the other side of the world to do it. But that's sport, right? And we get up and we rally. So a few months later, I towed the start line again in Brighton in the UK. This one, I learned from my mistakes of past and didn't go out too hard and I sat in a pack. And it was fantastic. At 25K, we was exactly where we needed to be to get the time we were after. The pack was flying, I'd taken in the right nutrition, and then at 32Ks, we turned a corner into a headwind that practically blew me back to Australia. It was the strongest wind of my life. Nobody got the time they wanted that day, and I missed out by not much, but enough to, to really disappoint me after putting in such an incredible effort. So, 2nd time in a row, shattered, but that's sport. A couple of months later, I rallied and I flew to Tokyo in Japan for the Tokyo Marathon. And as the plane hit the tarmac in Japan, they cancelled the race because of COVID. 3 times, devastated. So, as you know, 2020, we got plunged into a lockdown. My dream of making the Australian team vanished pretty quickly. And we had nowhere to run. I was living in Melbourne, the lockdown was pretty extreme. Couldn't go outside for more than an hour. And it was in that moment where I decided to turn a failure into a direction that was meant just for me, and I rallied and I made up Tip to Toe, which is the name of this expedition to run from the top of the country to the bottom, and I paired it with a cause that's really close to my heart, which is the environment. And I guess going back to my roots of growing up in the bush and being surrounded by all these wild animals, and I learned throughout the years that Australia is a world leader in biodiversity loss, and we're actually we have deforestation rates that are second only to the Amazon and now are just as bad. And so, I had this pent-up frustration in lockdown that I couldn't run and I couldn't do what I loved the most. And I also had this frustration of the way Australia was handling our biodiversity crisis. And I thought, I want to do something big to make a splash. And I didn't know really how. I don't have a background in conservation or climate studies. I'm a nutritionist and a run coach. And so I originally had this idea of just running from the top of the country to the bottom. And it was a pretty simple idea. It was to get from A to B in any way, shape or form I could. But I needed some financial backing to make this dream come to life. At this point, I didn't have anyone to come with me. I didn't have a support crew. I didn't know I could run more than one marathon in a row. And so I took my idea to market to try and get some sponsorship. And I had no Instagram account. I didn't have any social media following. And I'll have to say I got about 1,000 no's. And at this point I'm pretty disheartened. I've got this dream. It's a good idea. I thought running the length of Australia was a great idea, but clearly I was missing a hook. So I learned really quickly that you need to link a big idea, which is running the length of the country, with a marketing idea. And I didn't have that marketing idea at the time. And so I thought about it. And coincidentally, I met my partner at the same time, and he said, "Oh, why don't you go for the world record?" At the time, the world record was 106 consecutive marathons in a row, and you're well and truly going to cover that if you run the length of the country. And I thought, all right, that's a bit of a marketing ploy. And so I took that to market and said, hey, I'm doing this to raise money for the Wilderness Society, and I'm going to break a Guinness World Record. And immediately it worked. I had enough sponsorship to make this dream come to life. All I needed to do now was get my body right. And, there's not many people you can ask for advice on how to run 6,000 kilometers. I was a runner. I'd been a runner for 10 years at this point. And so what I actually did was I backed off the mileage, because my concept or my thought process was that I wanted to be strong and injury resilient at the start line rather than race fit, which is sometimes teetering on the edge of breaking down. So I went to the gym 4 times a week. I did a lot of unilateral and single leg stability work, and I just got myself as strong as possible. And I just relied on the fitness I had in the past. I got an off-road camper trailer because, it's very remote up north. And then I just quit my job and convinced my partner to come with me. And all of a sudden I'm driving through North Queensland on these corrugated roads to start this incredible expedition. And I clearly remember starting on the start line maybe a year into planning this. And I had my parents there, I had Rye there. And, that was the very tip of Australia. I had my hand on the sign and thinking, almost relief. Because once you're running, that's what I'm good at. That's what I know how to do, and I didn't have to worry about the sponsorship, the financial stuff. That was all the hard part. Running for me, to be honest with you, was the easy part. So we had a really simple setup. We had an off-road camper trailer and a 4-wheel drive. And because for the first 2,000 kilometers, the roads are really corrugated, so you can't, you need a 4-wheel drive to access the campsites. And my day went like this. I'd wake up at about 4 a.m. I'd eat breakfast. The sun was usually on its way up already, if not just about to rise. And I would get running within probably 20 to 30 minutes. And it was usually a slow first few kilometers because I had a lot of built up fatigue as the days went on. And I would usually run, depending on how good I felt, I would try and have a little break, a little walking break every 10 kilometers to get in my food and water. Some days I could run the whole thing non-stop. Some days were a lot harder, particularly if it was windy or hot or hilly. And I would, run 5 kilometers, walk 1, run 5. But my average pace for the entire 6,000 kilometers was 5:59. So I scraped in under 6. And I was usually finishing the marathons at around 4 hours and 15 minutes. So I stayed relatively consistent. So yeah, I'd start running. My partner would pack up the camper trailer and come south with me. For a large part of the northern part, I had my mum would come with me on a bike, and that's because there's no shops up there. There's literally no supplies. There's no phone reception. Phone reception is as rare as a river without a croc in it. There was so much beauty, but so much danger when it comes to the wilderness. So she rode beside me and would hand me water and electrolytes as we went, sunscreen, and kept me alive pretty much. And then as we got closer to civilization, I think Cooktown was our closest town a few weeks in. I put my start line every morning on social media or the night before, and in time, more and more people would join me, to the point where for the last 3 months of the journey, I didn't run solo at all. I would have groups of 20, 30, 40, 50, even hundreds of people join me on every run. And it made it special because I don't know every area in Australia. I was really reliant on the community to show me the beautiful places to run, and they just really showed me their own backyards. And that's what the spirit of this was. It was about showcasing the best of Australia, showcasing the wilderness we share it with. And you can't do that on your own. You need people to help you do that. So yeah, I remember I remember running into Newcastle and breaking the world record at 107, and the entire Newcastle community all got behind the finish line, and I'd never met any of these people before, and it was just such an exhilarating feeling crossing that line, knowing that no matter what, if I can't get to Melbourne, I've at least got the world record. And yeah, so I had 3 goals. My goal was to raise $10 per kilometre for the Wilderness Society, who are doing great things to protect nature. And managed to double that fundraising goal, so I raised $130,000. I had the goal of breaking the Guinness World Record, which we did at 107, and then went on to run 150. And then my third and final goal was to get to Melbourne in one piece. And I don't know how, it's a testament to how amazing the human body is, but I also got to Melbourne in one piece. To be honest, once I did break that world record in Newcastle, knowing I had 43 marathons to run, it was actually really difficult for a few days. I think I'd built up such an adrenaline rush to try and get that record that it was really almost hard to wake up and run 108 and 109 and 110. So they were probably my hardest days on this whole thing, and it's because I'd achieved the personal mission out of this. And I remember having to really remind myself of my why. Now, my why was to raise awareness and money for an incredible cause. And there was obviously the personal why, but that had been achieved. So I had to really, on my runs, focus in on that environmental cause and the purpose behind it. And it helped. It helped get me through that post-record slump as I got into the more southern states. And it was also hard because I was running through Christmas and my family were away and literally everybody else was with their family, and I was on the side of the road in, somewhere between Sydney and Canberra, on my own with my partner, just doing the same thing day in, day out, exhausted, no access to internet half the time, and not able to connect with our families during that Christmas period. And it was really rough. But we had a bigger goal and we were very focused on that goal, and I'm really proud of us for not stopping during that time and having a day off to go and spend Christmas with the family. We just continued to go through, and I think it really resonated with people because they all jumped back online the next day. They're like, wow, Erchana's still running. And I remember getting a lot of messages of support after that, realizing that I actually had sacrificed a lot to be out there, and it was on those days like Christmas and New Year where it really hit me. But I think I was in Albury-Wodonga for New Year's Day, and testament to those communities, there would have been 16 people who ran with me on New Year's Day at the crack of dawn and ran for the full marathon. So yeah, I couldn't have done it without the people that I met on this journey. And from there it got really exciting, because from there I moved into the Victorian high country. So it went from being dead flat country to mountainous ranges, and we summited Mount Bogon and Mount Feathertop in one day. And that was exhausting, and I got a fair bit of elevation, and then from there ran in through Bright, where I started to reconnect with my previous running community who were starting to drive out and run with me. And interestingly, I thought that I would be more tired as I got towards Melbourne because, you've ran 5,000 Ks before, but the truth is I actually was starting to feel re-energized, and all of my faster marathons, we started to run 3 hours 30, 3 hours 20 as we got closer to Melbourne, which blew my mind because, I thought it would be the opposite way around. And they really helped me through my last 15, 20 marathons. They actually became fun. I'd wake up really excited to run, really excited to connect with people, really excited to get out there. And I could feel the energy and excitement about getting to the finish line. And that final 2 or 3 days were my 3 favorite days, because where I grew up is exactly 3 days out from the finish line. And I remember rocking up to the start line. We were going to run what's called the Warburton Rail Trail. It's 40 kilometres from Warburton into Lilydale, which is pretty much towards Melbourne. And so it's easy run. And I got there and I thought, oh no, I've clashed my run with this bike tour or some sort of bike race, because there were so many bikes on where we were supposed to meet, and all these other people. It was a festival. And I thought, oh no. And I got there, and who it was my old soccer team 10 years later, all with kids in the back, who had come to ride the entire length with me. And there was this entire contingency of bike riders that came with me as well. And it just melted my heart. And then 149 I left for my family. As I said, I have 3 sisters, and that was hilarious because they are not athletes and they all had electric bikes, yet continued to whinge for 42K. my bum's sore, I'm tired. I'm like, team, this is your only marathon, you're on electric bikes. But it was funny, they made me laugh. And it was really good to leave one marathon just to do with my close family. And then finally, day 150, I deliberately did this a bit later in the day because it was a Monday and I wanted to finish after work so the community could get behind it. So the plan was to start at 1:30 and finish at 6 p.m. And it was a very, very, very hot Melbourne day. It was January the 16th, dry, windy. And I didn't expect anyone to come run at 1:30 in the afternoon. And there were people there, and what we did is we did one loop of Melbourne and then we finished at a really famous Melbourne running spot called the Botanical Gardens. It's called the Tan. It's a 3.8k loop and I was going to do it 4 times and people could join me for 1 lap or 2 laps or the whole thing. And yeah, I remember doing the first lap and picking up all these people for the second lap and then picking up more for the third lap and then finally finishing to this amazing group of people who had come down to see the finish. And the news was there and I was on the project and it feels overwhelming in hindsight, and I don't really think I processed it very well. I think it took me months and months to process the enormity of what I'd accomplished. And it's only now looking back over footage, I'm like, no, everyone was there, So yeah, I was really proud of that day and I wish I could remember it more. It's very blurry, but no, yeah, it was an incredible day. So once I crossed that finish line, yeah, life temporarily changed for sure. I was inundated with a lot of media surrounding the event, and which was perfect because my whole concept was the more attention the run got, the more of a platform I could give the cause and potentially raise a little bit more money or get the message out there about the extinction crisis that I was running for. But I do remember a week later, very clearly, my family had flown in from all over the world to be at the finish line, and I dropped them off at the airport and then fell asleep for literally weeks. I was so exhausted, emotionally, physically. I had no energy to do it. I was so tired and I couldn't remember or retain information. It was just in one ear and out the other. And yeah, I remember feeling quite unwell for a few months, and eventually I just thought, okay, you've got to be easy on yourself. And yeah, I definitely think it took me 3 months to get my energy back, and in that time I didn't run that much. I did a little bit of swimming and a lot of walking and cycling, and it felt good to start running again. But I just channeled my energy into everything else post tip to toe. So I started doing a lot of keynote speaking and sharing my story with schools and corporate businesses and other sporting teams. I coach running now, particularly for endurance athletes and marathon runners. I'm a nutritionist, so I revisited my old trade. And yeah, I do a lot of ambassadorship roles. I'm the ambassador for the Gold Coast Marathon this year and hopefully next year as well. And yeah, just trying to get people motivated to get in the outdoors. I mean, I showed just how capable the human body is, and now my dream is to encourage as many other people to get outside, explore nature, connect to nature, move their bodies and push their limits, because it's incredible how far your limits go. I guess when I think about what's next, I'm toying with the idea of doing something that is completely outside my comfort zone. So I'm a runner, so this was within my sphere of uncomfortable. It was a comfortable uncomfortable. So I think next I want to do something that is completely abstract to me, completely scary, like kayaking or maybe a cycle tour or a paddle or a climb, or something that I have to learn a new skill to be able to do and really challenge myself in a lateral way. And I don't know what it is yet, time will tell, but I've had some incredible collaborations that I've been talking to, and yeah, I'd love to do it with someone else next time, because yeah, I don't know, I love working with people. And yeah, I guess that's a beautiful segue to my team. I have an incredible team around me. Firstly, my partner, he's a filmmaker and an exceptional chef. And so we have a documentary coming out about the expedition. It's called 150. It's in the final stages of post-production, so fingers crossed you'll see it on a streaming service soon. He's working very hard on that. He was my #1 support crew while I was out there. I have a really close partnership with my sponsors, Garmin Australia and Tarkine Running. And I believe that the brands that you partner with need to really believe in what you're doing, and you need to have aligned philosophies. So Tarkine, for example, they use recycled product to make their shoes, and they donate money back to the environment from every sale. So I'm a big supporter of that. During Tip to Toe, I partnered with 99% Australian companies. They all had a great sustainability ethos. They all were B Corp. So I just made sure that whoever I partnered with in my team were doing good for the environment in the same way that I wanted to do good for the environment. And I do hope that in the future we will continue to work together. They're incredible brands, and I'm very grateful for what they do for me. So now that I'm based on the Gold Coast, I'm really trying to continue my efforts in the activism space. So earlier in October, it was World Animal Day, and unfortunately Australia has 123 animals on the critically endangered list. So that means that they are very likely to become extinct in the next kind of few months to years. So to make a little bit of a stand, I decided to, on that day, run up Miami Hill 123 times, one time for every animal on the critically endangered list. And I put it out on social media and invited people to join me for one to however many laps they wanted to do. And yeah, it was a really great day. It was exhausting. I mean, 123 times up the hill, and I had an incredible group around me that did it. Channel 7 News came down. We had 2 people get over 100 climbs. So I had someone do the entire 123 hills with me, which was phenomenal. And it's just a really beautiful way to connect with the community and also to raise a bit of awareness for an issue that's pretty close to my heart. And now I've started to join a few clubs on the Gold Coast. I'm trying to really immerse myself in the running culture here. And yeah, if you do want to get into running, I think my first and biggest suggestion is find a group, because groups are fun. You know, you want a connection. It makes you feel more accountable to going. It gets you out there, and it doesn't matter where you are. There is running groups for every single level, from pro right down to trying to run your first 3 kilometers. You'll find them. And yeah, I think for me, my biggest tip is running is always hardest early on. So keep at it. It'll start to feel easier. You'll start to improve, you know. And it's amazing. It's a really great way to get outside and immerse yourself in the outdoors and get a little bit fitter while you're doing it. So it's a bit of a win-win. If anyone wants any more information about my exhibition, sorry, cut that bit out. If anyone wants a little bit more information on what I've done before or what's planning, yeah, you can reach out, find me on socials. I'm on Instagram at Erchana. It's just my name, and same as Facebook. So yeah.